back for another Talk About It Tuesday. And as usual, we have a great question. This is a question I answered partially in the group page, but I didn't really have enough space and enough time to really lay it out for you. So I promised to make a video out of it. So I'm going to read it to you. And the question is, with cannabis becoming legalized in more states, what steps can we take to get involved and find the best company? Do we invest in stocks or become investors? Great question. And before I dive into that, of course, I have to share a little bit of mindset and background before I get into the specifics of the question. There is no investment that you should be getting involved in if it does not fit into a greater strategy that you've already laid out. So why would you be investing unless you've determined that investing is going to get you closer to your desired outcome? So getting that out of the way, because I have to constantly reinforce that, the next thing you want to look at is this a part of a trend or is it a fad? Right? Because we've heard a lot. You see the ads on Facebook, you see ads on Instagram, probably get spammed with email about investing in cannabis. And I'm sure if you've seen on the news, you see that legalization, whether it's medicinally or recreationally, is spreading to many states in the country. So we have to look at this thing as a trend because we see it has a long trajectory, unlike what a fad is. A fad is a phenomenon that comes out of nowhere and it disappears just as quickly. When we look at things like that spinning thing kids were and that hoverboard stuff, those are fads, right? They came out of nowhere. They offered the promise of making a lot of money and most people jumped on it a little bit too late and boom, gone. But marijuana is something a little bit different because we've watched this thing over a period of time and we watch it grow. So there's certain trends that we have to look at. It's not just the industry trend because of course that industry is growing, but we have to look at political and ideological trends, right? So there's a trend now towards progressivism as opposed to conservatism, right? So, and that pendulum swings back and forth. So conservatives are totally against it. Progressives are totally for it. You have to decide where we are in that trend, political, ideological, and where that trend is going and how long you think it will last so you can determine whether or not it's good to get in now, right? The other trend you have to look at is social trends. Socially, it is far more acceptable today than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And evidence of that, Kamala Harris, who's announced her candidacy for president, was asked on the radio, and it aired all over TV, whether or not she had smoked marijuana before. And she said, yes, I've smoked marijuana. She said it proudly. And let's just think back to quite a few years ago now in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was asked the same question, he tried to hedge. He was like, yeah, well, I smoked it, but I didn't inhale. And because it wasn't as socially acceptable at that time as it is now. So we see the social trend moving towards more acceptance. And we have to look at innovation trends. Innovatively, we know that the industry has grown far beyond what people consider marijuana use, which was rolling up a joint. So they have edibles in all types of forms. They have oils. They have, all these different ways that they've innovated and expanded to make it more socially acceptable, make it more palatable, as opposed to, people walking around smoking joints all day. So we see there's innovative trends and even medicinally how it's used because they've even been able to extract, the chemical portion of it that makes you get high. And so that it just has a medicinal effect. So we see tremendous innovation trend. We see a political trend, an ideological trend, and social trend. So there's definitely a trajectory in that direction. All that being said, you are not investing in marijuana. You are investing in a company that sells marijuana. So when you're looking for a company or an investment, there are certain things that are fundamental that you should look at no matter what you're investing in. It doesn't matter what the industry is. There are certain things that are critically important. The first thing that you have to look at when you're looking at a company is, does it have an easily identifiable competitive advantage? I'll give you an example. When you need to send a package overnight and you need guaranteed delivery, the U.S. Postal Service can do it. UPS can do it. And there are a host of other companies that can do it, but you FedEx it. And as a matter of fact, FedEx has become a verb. FedEx the package, because when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, you use FedEx. They have an easily identifiable competitive advantage in that arena. So if it was overnight shipping that you were investing in, right, a company that does overnight shipping, then FedEx would be it. Give you another example that might be a little closer to home. You have to understand also what somebody is selling. And that's what gives them the competitive advantage. There are a lot of cafes, there are a lot of bakeries, but there is only one Dunkin' Donuts. Now, is Dunkin' Donuts selling a good tasting, good quality donut? No, the donuts taste terrible. They can't hold a candle to, what's that, Krispy Kreme or somebody like that. The donuts are disgusting, actually. They sell coffee. They can't hold a candle to Starbucks. But that's not what people are buying. What they're buying is, because they say what? America runs on Dunkin'. So what you're buying is a boost in the morning, a boost of carbohydrates, a boost of sugar, and a boost of caffeine on your morning commute so that you can get yourself up so you can go to a job that you hate. Dunkin' Donuts has an easily identifiable competitive advantage in that regard. It's quick, it's easy, it's inexpensive, you can grab it, and it gives you a sugar and caffeine rush to get you going in the morning. They have an easily identifiable competitive advantage. So if that's what I was going to invest in, if I was going to invest in a good tasting donut, which doesn't necessarily sell, would be somebody else. But I understand what they're selling. So you have to look at, do they have a competitive advantage? What is this company selling in the marijuana industry or cannabis industry that would make it stand out amongst the others? You have to look at its profitability. Has it made a profit? And is it showing growth in terms of its profitability? If it's not making money and it's not showing growth, then maybe you shouldn't invest in it. Does it have long-term debt? And how is it managing that debt? So long-term debt is debt that it would carry for 10 years or longer. Most of these companies have not shown a profit. Most of these companies are deep in debt. So do they have a manageable debt? You have to consider that. Who is the management and how good of a job are they doing? You need to know who's running this company. If it's some guy who just came off the street or somebody who has never managed a business before, but they had a lot of money, just jumped into it, maybe they're not the best person to manage it because they can run it into the ground. Some other things you have to look at are the return on investment. That's critical to understand. What's the percentage of return on investment that is averaging? Are you going to get the desired return that you're looking for? I don't invest in anything that I don't get at least 10% from. So I don't know what your criteria is, but are you going to get the type of return that you're looking for? Are they free to invest into other areas, or do they invest in other things, or is it just marijuana? How well do they do in that area? How are the workarounds in terms of, it's still illegal on the federal level. So what are their workarounds? How are they dealing with that? Because they can't put money in the bank. Everything has to be cash. So how are they working around that? How are they dealing with the security issues? How are they dealing with payment of employees? How are they dealing with taxes? How are they dealing with, all the workarounds, because it's, federally still a crime. What is their plan if the federal law starts to get enforced? Like, what is their exit strategy? So you want to look at all these different things before you invest in a company. We know the trend towards legalization is happening, but you don't know necessarily, how well a company, especially a new company, is doing. So there are some companies that have been around for a little longer, especially in the early states like Colorado. Look at them, check them out, see how well they're doing. Do your homework. You need to know everything, not only about that company, but about the industry as well. The first rule of investing is do not invest in anything that you do not understand. And being a cannabis user does not make you understand. So again, you have to understand the federal laws, the state laws, the workarounds. You have to understand, how well this company is doing, what their plans are for the future, what the debt, when they expect to at least break even, are they profitable? You have to understand all these things before you invest in the company. So just because it's a big thing on Facebook or a big thing in your spam doesn't mean it's the right thing. Does it fit your overall strategy? because if it doesn't, then you shouldn't be investing anyway in anything. Also, in investing, I have a 90-10 rule. 90% goes in things that are less risky and more stable in around the 10% return range. And then 10% of my money I invest in to the windfall potential. So things that could potentially get me a high risk. So you need to consider that too. Don't put your life savings into something that is a potential windfall because it tends to be much more risky than other things. If you don't understand it, it's 100% too risky for you. So do your homework. I hope this helped you out a little bit. Just make sure you have a plan and make sure you do your homework before you do anything. And the rule is always test small, lose small, test big, lose big. So test it out first, see how things go. If it's something that you're comfortable with and it's starting to perform in the way you expect, then you can put a little bit more later. But don't dump your life savings in something that's brand new, you don't understand, federally illegal. Do your homework. So hope that answered the question. If you have any more questions or comments, please add them at the bottom, and I will see you next Tuesday.